Testing, check, check, 1, 2, 3. Testing, check, check, 1, 2, 3. Hello, welcome to the Ninja Robot Studio LLC stream where I play video games and VR experiences and talk through them from a UX designer's perspective. And everything that I'm doing here on the stream is kind of just showing you how I work. This is my process for how I work in the real world on actual work. This is me doing actual research for the content that I create. If you don't know, if you're new to the videos or the stream, I create content teaching people about UX best practices for XR specifically. My main focus is on VR because I don't have access to any AR or mixed reality headsets. They're not the easiest thing to get a hold of right now. So all of my focus is on VR. In the future, hopefully I will be able to branch out to do more focus on those, since we do believe that mixed and augmented reality are going to be more ubiquitous than virtual reality. They're going to become ubiquitous and potentially in the future replace smartphones, augmented and mixed reality headsets. But virtual reality will still be a commonplace thing as well, but not as ubiquitous as mixed in the market predictions, at least. So here is the link tree to all the things, and I will include that in the show notes for those that are going to watch it later on demand. And I create content, and so what I do on the stream is I'm basically just working on pattern gathering. So I'm creating a pattern library that you can see if you click on the link tree and go to the UX for XR toolkit. You'll see a link called in the menu called patterns. That's where I'm gathering patterns of how other people have solved problems. And I'm doing that live on the show. And talking through those things from a UX perspective. What are the best practices on this? Is this following those best practices? Should we get this in front of people to test it before validating whether or not it's a good or bad pattern, and so forth? And so I started with tabletop RPGs, and you can see that report out if you look at the About section on my Twitch page. If you just scroll down and look at the About section, you should see links to all of my previous games that I've studied, and there should be links to report outs, and you'll be able to see the synthesis and so forth of tabletop RPGs. And then I worked on platformers, and you can watch me doing the synthesis on that. So what I will do in a game is I will play through a game, talk through it from the UX designer's perspective, talk about it, looking at it through the lens of the UX pillars for gaming UX. And then, and if you want to learn more about the pillars of gaming UX, there is the link to that as well that will be included in the show notes, and here it is in the chat for you as well, if you want to learn more about that. But we go through a game, talk about it from that perspective, a UX perspective, and then we'll go through a process, an exercise called Rose, Thorn, Bud. At the end, we will go through a Rose, Thorn, Bud. And roses are what went well, what was a highlight, what did you like? Thorns are what didn't go well, what was the low point, what did you not like? And then buds are opportunities, next steps, what would you do differently next time? What questions do you have? So the idea of this exercise could be used for many, many things, but we use it here for analyzing these experiences. There is a more in-depth way of doing analysis on experiences called expert reviews, heuristic reviews. However, those are usually very, very, very in-depth and take a very long time to do. And usually you charge a good amount of money to people to do that. So we're not doing that live on stream, but we are doing this simple Rose, Thorn, Bud exercise, which is a good exercise that people can do on teams if they're wanting to analyze experiences rapidly. And we want to keep track of the good things because we want to learn from that. What are good practices? What are good patterns? And we want to keep track of it, especially if it's a real project, to know, hey, we don't want to get rid of this while we're getting so distracted by trying to fix all the thorns that we accidentally undo something that's good. So we want to keep track of the good. And we want to have a distinct, so you see here a definitive list. These are all the things that are working. These are all the things that aren't working. And what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about the things that aren't working? Sometimes that is a follow-up. Sometimes that's follow-up research. Sometimes that's adding on, making a change to the design so that that's the easy fix. And sometimes it is exploring a new way of doing something. Sometimes, these are the next steps. So what could we do better? What is either a best practice that we need to change it to follow? What is this new feature that we need to add that's missing? And so forth. And there's the train. And I don't know if you can hear it or not, but they're always very loud. And then, so then after that, we will talk through, okay, if this is not, because I don't only play XR experiences, I'll also play 2D video games. What would we need to think about if we were to translate this into XR? And if it is already VR, what would we need to think about if we were going to translate that into augmented or mixed reality? And should we translate these things into XR? Because not everything needs to be in XR. XR, the idea is that it makes things better than you can accomplish in 2D computing. So is it going to be better in XR? So that is another question that we ask. And then, so right now, since I've finished up, we've been working on training simulations, I'm finishing up that research and I am synthesizing it now. So I'm going through step by step. We played Rover Mechanic Simulator. We played Car Mechanic Simulator. Wrench has a desktop version and a VR version because we wanted to see how they translated one to the other. And then I also played First Steps in VR and First Contact in VR. There aren't a lot of publicly available VR training sims that are affordable that at the moment. So we didn't get a chance to play more training than this. So what I wound up figuring out during the synthesis is I'm going through all of these different notes and just synthesizing it together in a bigger rose thorn bud, putting things together, seeing the patterns of, okay, these are the overarching things that are working. These are the individual game standouts of what's working. Like Rover Mechanic Simulator has learning paths. So what are some overarching issues, things that didn't go well for across the board, and what are some individual game issues that we still need to learn from to make sure we don't repeat, and then what are our overarching recommendations based on all of this. So right now I'm just going through and synthesizing that, and I do have a bunch of follow-up that I need to do. And to follow up, this is just going in and checking this behavior in these games. Is it doing this? Is it not doing this? So tooltips show when hovering over objects. Is this an overarching thing? I know for sure that it's happening in these two, but is it happening in the others? I need to go back and verify. So that's the follow-up. And also I found while I was doing the synthesis that we have two different things going on here, two different types of training. All the mechanic, the wrench, the rover mechanic, the car mechanic, all of these are training skills, whereas first steps and first contact are training interacting with the world. So there's two different types of training going on that I didn't fully think about when I grabbed the games to play, but that will affect how whatever it is that I come up with. I'm not sure yet what I'm going to come up with out of this. What is the deliverable going to be from this research besides patterns? Because that will definitely be one of the deliverables. I will be doing some kind of something, a report, a video, both. I'm not sure yet. A course, because I actually do create online courses for people, and I do have plans to make training content around creating training in VR. So this may feed that as well. So that's one of the benefits of having it in this format of the Post-its, is that you have it in a format that is easy to look at and see what's going on visually without having to comb through a written report. Because combing through a written report, I promise, takes longer than just being able to look at, here's all the information, now I can get it into any kind of format that I want, whether that's a video or a report or whatever. So that is the benefit of also using Post-its in Rose Thorn Bud method, as opposed to just going ahead and writing a report. And you also visually see things that you may not have seen otherwise. That's another reason that I really like Post-its, is I'm a visual thinker, so seeing things laid out helps me to make brain connections that I wouldn't have otherwise. So I'm finished where we left off last time was at first steps. And so now we're just picking up at first steps. I'm leaving myself notes when I stop working on it. So first steps, and we're just gonna go through starting with the roses. So first step starts with a small amount of animated light and then grows over time. So this is the environment. So let me make that clear. The environment starts with a small amount of animated light and then it grows over time. So that's helping you get acclimated to the virtual environment. Let's see if that's something I already mentioned. So Car Mechanic Simulator does have something interesting in the way they do it, where they start objects with white. All the objects in the world, they're already there. They're loaded that way. but they are white. And then only the things that you're going to be learning about are in color. So that's another way of handling that, getting over the awe factor that people have when they first get into an experience or VR for the first time, period. So that it is in the individual standout. So there's going to be multiple levels of like combining and sorting information. Right now, I'm just getting the information on here onto the single board that says, okay, these behave this way, but I want to. So I talk about the awe factor here. I'm going to make a note just so that if I'm having a brain is still asleep moment in the future, which does happen, I will still be able to make that connection. So I'm just going to type awe factor here so that when I bring it over here, this is first steps, and that's this. And well, actually, first steps and first contact do that as well. So let's see. So in that case, I'm going to type it out. First steps, first contact, and car mechanic simulator. So I'm just gonna make that smaller, and so I'm gonna just put that together because these three are doing this thing. So they are handling the awe factor. So let me make a note here about awe factor. And so I'm going to specifically say here, first steps does this. And actually, let's see, first contact does the same thing. They are both from the same company. And then car mechanic simulator. There starts with objects white, except things that you're learning about. So I'm going to move this. I'm going to move this one down here together with this one, and just make a note that that's car mechanic simulator. And hello, it wasn't responding. Okay, now I can scoot all that up. And it looks like I have a note to myself down there I need to check. See. Verify whether that's desktop or VR or both. Okay, so I have another follow-up to do down here on these. Okay. There will probably be an episode or stream where I actually do work on the follow-up live. So I'll be hopping in and out of different games or scrubbing video, one or the other. So you can at least see how that goes. This is basically just you seeing how somebody, I've been doing this for ages, decades, and not specifically for VR, but for UX. I've been designing experiences for over 24 years, most recently VR. And so this is just the skills that I've picked up over the years of working with various people and learning from various people on the job. And so this is my accumulated process of how I do things. And each individual is going to come up with their own process, what works for them, as long as you're not like compromising the scientific methods of the things that you're doing with UX. You're going to come up with your own way of working that is going to be efficient and work for you. Hopefully over time you'll consider, how am I working? Can I work more effectively without compromising the science of UX? And that's just going to be something that happens over time. So animations are not overwhelming and they don't cause sickness. So that is, let's see. So I'm looking to see if there is anything in the overarching or if anyone else had that pattern, because I would do the same thing that I did here with this one and say, okay, so it's not all of them, but a number of them are doing this, and so forth. They're not overwhelming. They don't cause sickness. Oh, I need to make that connection because that's there. Yeah. Oh, okay, no. So that was another combination like I did with First Contact and Rover Mechanic Simulator have nostalgia. So I think I'm going to take the things that have more than one game involved and move them down here. So that we've got the things that multiple games are doing versus the things that are just individual. These things, or these, only these games are doing these things. It's just me helping, making me make mental connections. And I haven't drank enough coffee yet, so my brain's still asleep today. Animations are not overwhelming, don't cause sickness. I don't think that I wrote that about any of the other ones, but I'm thinking through, is that something that is a pattern across all of them? So thinking about Rover Mechanic Simulator, there weren't any, I don't think there were any. Let's look at Thorns. Let's see, did I complain about that for anyone? We finally got rain here. We've been good. It's severe drought in my area, and we finally got rain in the form of very loud thunderstorms. So I didn't get enough sleep last night because it was loud, even with earplugs. So I'm tired. How's everyone doing that's watching? How are y'all doing? How's your day going? I'm not seeing any complaints about animation. Well, okay, so Car Mechanic Simulator and Rover Mechanic, apparently they do a lot of auto panning. So yeah, so never mind. That's not an overarching thing. So it's not something that they all do. But I might want to follow up and like make sure. So I'm going to put it over here in the follow-up and then just do the same thing I'm doing for all of them. So this is definitely on First Steps because that's the one that we're talking about right now. First Contact, yes. Same thing. And then Wrench. I think that is also the case for Wrench. Let me verify that I didn't complain about that. And again, I was only able to make it through. Okay, so I was only able to make it through the training I didn't even actually make it through the tutorial. I rage quit the tutorial because it took an hour. And I still wasn't done with it. So not a good design on the tutorial. For wrench. But so I don't know about in the actual game whether or not there's any overwhelming animation or anything. From the demo that I played a long time ago, I don't think that there is, but I would want to verify. So I'm going to leave that blank, but let me go ahead and add, because I did complain about, I'm going to say auto panning and zooming, which is not something you want to do in VR at all, because that is going to make people sick. And if you like ever go watch Cardboard 360 videos where they'd make the documentary videos of like different locations, they'll pan the camera because that's something that you're used to doing in cinematography, because it adds interest and visual action. Motion is important in film. However, you have to treat it differently in VR and mixed reality because you can cause a much higher risk of motion sickness. You can already cause motion sickness with your films in traditional 2D films, especially if they're watching on a bigger screen. There's a lot of motion going on. I am one of those people that's prone to that. However, in VR, it's much more important not to do that because you're surrounded by it now. And so your periphery is going to always see motion. If you're moving things for them, you have to be careful with how you handle motion. And so regardless of what it is that you're doing. So don't auto pan or zoom in VR. Let the user always have control over the motion. So then I'm going to have to validate Wrench, the actual game, because I still haven't made it to the actual game. One of these days I'm just gonna have to like camp out or just, okay, forget the tutorial, skip it, I don't care, I'm just gonna try to figure it out in the game. Because the tutorials, it has good things and a lot of not so good things, especially the length of time is the not so good thing. Okay. So yeah, I'll follow up on that one. And the tooltips for common actions are visible at all times. Oh, I'm in the wrong one. Here. First steps. Music is cheerful, portraying wonder and possibilities. I don't even remember the music in most of them. First contact, yes. First steps, yes. I really don't remember Rover mechanic or car mechanic or... I think they're just mechanical sounds, car sounds, engine sounds. So it's a different thing. So that goes into the purpose of the application. Yeah, introducing people to a new world is basically what they're doing, and teaching them how to interact with that new world. So I might just make that a separate thing. That's kind of that's the interaction training versus the skills training. And both first contact and first steps do that. So I'm just going to say steps and contact because they both have first in them. I don't need to type the whole thing out. Objects slowly build up in the scene over time, and that helps you get acclimated to the digital space. And so that's going to go back in with that awe factor that we have up here. And this is from First Steps. Okay. And voiceover is repeating everything on the sign on the back wall. This is something that only happens in First Steps. They're the only ones that do that. First Contact doesn't have any words. They don't speak. It's all, which is brilliant. First Steps, First Contact is all NPC behaviors. Body language of NPC behaviors. So if you want to study NPCs and how they interact with you in VR, look at First Contact. The First Steps is the only one that has a voice over. Pretty sure. And let's see, First Steps and First Contact. So that's something I'm going to have to validate. The next one, multiple types of sensory feedback. I'm going to have to validate that. So I'll have to go double check which one of them to do that one. So that's a follow-up. There's usually a lot of follow-up because the nature of this and how I'm doing it for this is that I am just playing the game and then I'm just doing a rose thorn bud on what I think about. Ideally, you would be doing this with a team of people, so to reduce the amount of follow-up double checking you have to do. Ideally, you would be working with a team and the team would be taking notes while one of you goes through, plays it, and everyone's watching you play it. And then you're all taking notes and you're all doing it together so that you don't miss as much stuff. And then as you go through them, you'll start to see, when I'm doing, this is what we would call competitive landscaping. How have other people solved this problem? Is I would have a list of like features, kind of like what I'm doing here. This list of things shows you how to access reference information in manuals, tooltips for common actions visible at all times. These would be things that, so just like I'm doing here, I would have that list and I would build on that list as I go through and look at each of the things. But I would bring that list out of, so competitive landscaping isn't the only type of research that you do. So thinking about this from a real project, if this were something I was actually building versus just creating patterns from, because all I'm doing is gathering patterns and looking at best practices for how others have done this to establish like, okay, what can we learn from others? If I were actually making a training sim and I would not be starting at competitive landscaping. I would be starting at user research, field research, going and studying what is it that I'm training them on, and then I would go watch those people that are doing that job do it. How do they do it right now? And then from that research, and interviews, I would then create a list of potential features, like not. Because you always want to validate, of course, and decide amongst your team what you want to actually happen here. And then I would go, that's where the competitive landscaping would come in. How have other people solved this problem before? So like giving an easy way of finding the next step if they're if the next step is out of the field of view, for example. Because maybe that's something that people in the current training sim like complained about. It's like, I never see where the next step is. I have to look everywhere. So then one of the things that we would want to make sure we do, which is a bud here, is make sure that there's an easy way to find that next step. So I would have that list, and then I would go through the competition. If there's competition, I would go through theirs. And maybe the competition isn't all that great, or there's not any because this thing doesn't exist yet anywhere else. So then I would be looking outside of that. I would be looking outside to other inspiration. So, okay, so we can't look at mechanic. Look, although there's plenty, but assuming that there was no other mechanic simulator out there and we were the ones making the first one ever, then I would look at how other people do training or simulations or anything like that. How are they doing it? How are they solving problems? Are they successful? Let me look and see. And then, so what are their features? And then if I had time, I would actually have my target audience. I would watch those games being played by other people. I would do research on those and see, okay, what are people struggling with? What are they not struggling with? And then from that, if I had time, because usually you don't, because real life projects are not going to pay for that. Pay for you testing your competition. They usually don't do that. Rarely you will be able to analyze if you're trying to pick a solution for yourself. Ideally, that's one of the big problems that companies have whenever they're introducing new software to their employees, is they usually have not done any kind of user testing on that. Usability testing, they're usually just looking at features, and whichever's the best salesperson gets the deal. And then the employees suffer for that. But I'm getting off topic. But you can do research on that. But so if I were creating a sim, so back on topic, I would have a list, and then I would play through the various sims and say, okay, do they have this? Do they not have it? How are they handling that specific thing? And then I would go from there. But since this is not that's not what this project is. What my project is I'm just gathering patterns for how people have solved training, have done good training. What are they doing well? What are they not doing well? So that I can grow this library that I have, that I will show you real quick. Just go to the website. There is a login. If you're a patron at a certain tier, you get benefits and get access to more content. So that's why there's a login. But so these are the patterns. So for animation, how are people solving animation in VR without making people sick? I don't have anything built out for collaborative and social yet. Controller interactions. So this is like, how are they handling controller interactions? The problem to solve is that VR users in particular are a captive audience. The load scenes. Or controller interactions for load scenes. So I need to fix my categorization on that. Cutscenes, here's one. How do they handle cutscenes and scene transitions without making you sick? With traditional film, there are many options for people. You like that. So I was talking about panning, zooming, all these interesting things that you can do. But with VR, it's going to make people sick. So how do other people handle cutscenes, backstories, things like that? They handle it by letting you turn pages in a book and tell a story for the backstory. And then once you're in the present state, they will fade in, fade out the scene. So if you see when she goes out of view of this particular location, you'll fade in and fade out and into a new location. And there she is waiting for you to start the next scene. That's how they handle it in Moss and so forth. So how are different people handling how to keep people from getting sick? So load scenes for embodiment and presence is the problem of their captive audience. It can take a long time for scenes to load, and we get frustrated with that in 2D. It's even more frustrating in VR, and sometimes you can even think that it's broken. So how are other people solving this problem? So this is how they solve it. They are showing you a 360 image of what it is that you're going into. You can turn your head and it says it's loading. This is how they solve the problem. And then Ghost Giant lets you draw sparkly lines in the air. And so that's how people are solving that problem. And I don't know why I have that one here. That doesn't belong there. I need to fix that. But it does. Yeah, I don't know why these are here. That one makes sense here, kind of, but not really. So I'm gonna have to fix that. That is working with databases and keywords and tags. So I'm gonna have to go fix that. Tags. Okay. So anyway, that's what I'm working on, just creating patterns for that library. So my use case is different than what you would be if you were actually creating a sim. So voiceover, so I just did that. Multiple types of sensory feedback. I think I did that. I just did that. And these two, yes, for sure. But I need to validate with the other ones. So don't remember. So this walks you step by step through each type of interaction. They do for sure. Thinking about first contact. Not in the same way. I think first contact is the way they set it up. Oculus originally, before Meta bought them. Oculus set it up where you would play first steps, and then that would take you into first contact. So then first contact was an additional level of practice, like kind of like the 101 and the 201, or like you learn this first and then you can go to the next stage. Here's more practice. It still has reminders, but it's still practicing how do you interact with this world. That's how they set it up. So it's not necessarily walking you through, but it is giving you reminders. So that is first steps. I'm thinking about Car Mechanic Simulator and so forth. Car Mechanic Simulator does, but it skips steps. Because I complained about that. I complained about Car Mechanic Simulator skipping steps. Ranch. Ranch takes you step by step in the tutorial. I don't know about the game, but in the tutorial, they take you step by step. But their execution is not that great. Because of how they've designed the environment, it's not that great. So I think Rover Mechanic Simulator. I think they do walk you step by step. But they also skip some stuff, like they're not reminding me. They're assuming I remember what I learned. You can't practice while you're reading the tutorial. You have to go back and forth. That's annoying. Yeah. So no, they're not going step by step the way that... So it's not an overarching thing. That's what I'm trying to get to. Is it an overarching thing or is it just first steps? I think it is just first steps. To that caliber, I think it's just first steps. I kind of still want to validate that, so I'm going to move it over here. It may not take that long to validate. Hopefully it won't, because I think they don't really. Because all of your interactions in First Contact are really mostly grabbing things. You pull a trigger sometimes, you grab, you wave, push a button. But they're reminding you, they're not the more subtle I'll just make that. It's just more of a subtle reminder than it is an instruction on how to do it. Step by step. And these I don't remember what level they go through. I don't think some of these skip steps. So like Car Mechanic Simulator, I complained that they skipped steps. And I think I did it on that one as well. And then wrench, I have to validate. My voice is going out because of the weather. It lets you go at your own pace, so I think they all do. I don't think any of them force you to rush. Yeah, so it says it right there. Able to go at your own pace. Yeah. So that's already an overarching theme. Tooltips update based on the context of proximity. Is that something that I already put in here? Let's see. Relevant to different controllers. I'll have to validate that. Not sure about the others, but that one sure does. Now, physics and gravity work as expected. I think that's the case on all of them. I'm just smiling because First Contact has a section where you activate an anti-gravity field. But yeah, it works as expected. So that is an overall thing. Finger highlights for which button to press. That's not going to be a thing on 2D, so it's not going to be relevant to them. So here, whoa, what happened there? Wrench does not do that. No. Those are the only 3 VR games. Wrench doesn't do that. The grip behavior is realistic. Only in first steps and first contacts. Wrench, the glove is wonky. Let me validate that. I'll validate that. It is not applicable only on the desktop ones. Actually, it might be relevant on that one. So this one is yes, and this one's yes. These are not applicable. Because there's no hands to grip. Okay, so provides cartridges, mini experiences for practice. That's just on first steps and first contact. A way of providing practice. Okay. And now Thorns. At the very beginning of the dialogue, it auto progresses. Yeah, so if you're still setting up your headset or something, you're distracted by the external world, you're gonna miss stuff. Let's see, does that happen anywhere else? And there's no dialogue in, so that's first contact only. First contact only. Okay. As you can see with wrench, there were a ton of issues with wrench. A lot. And then can't restart within the scene, have to leave and restart. I think that might be something that's with all of them. With the tutorials. I will have to validate that. So I'll put it here. I have to validate. So yeah, I don't know about that one. Okay. Can't reset the scene. It's not clear how to do it. Reset the scene. I like orientation. So orientation. That is an Oculus thing. Because that was the Rift. Or Oculus Desktop. Because I was doing the desktop version. But not desktop as in the sense of it's like PC based. That's why I mean PC based Rift. Not the Quest, because the Quest you can do it. It's just not clear, at least, how to do it on the Rift if you have your Quests hooked up with the link cable. That's going to only be... Is that worth putting in here? That's a hardware thing. A way of bringing back tooltips what you completed the first time. I have to validate that one. And then I'll add that other one. I'll have to validate the other ones. And now I'll put this one here. But they're discontinuing the Rift, so it's kind of moot. Okay, so now I need to add these. At the very beginning, they allow Manual progression of the dialogue. This is a common thing. This is a common problem amongst all games, but for some reason it wasn't an issue. It's because of the type of game. If there's narrative in the game, because Rover Mechanic Simulator, Car Mechanic Simulator, Wrench, they didn't have narrative, but First Steps, First Contact do have narrative. Well, First Contact's all NPC behavior. It's narrative, but it's NPC behavior, so there's no words. But in this case, in the training thing, this was actually the only one that was an issue with, but it's actually a very common issue. Wrench solved the problem by just slamming everything on one screen. You have to read a ton of content, which is also not awesome. And provide a way to restart the experience. I need to make sure that is linked to that as well. And that is the second to last one. And these boards get so big that now I have trouble like drawing the lines from one to the next because they're so big and I can't read the post-its when I zoom out to draw the line. I make really big boards. Let's see. Include how to reset the scene. That is a hardware thing. Maybe. And then give a way to bring back tooltips in case you forget. I'm going to move this over. And do that. And that is it for Rose Thorn Buds for First Contact. But let's look at what we're talking about here, translating. I already mentioned motion sickness, I already mentioned fillers. Training also needs to be in here because duh, that's what it's all about. For any tutorial, allow them to practice and retry tasks. That's regardless of whether it's in 2D or 3D. Let them practice. So do I already say that? Nope. So I'll go ahead and add that. And if it's for mixed reality or augmented reality, you need to be able to identify objects in real space. Do I say that? Nope. So I'll add that. It's a different beast when you're designing training for mixed, because there's going to have to be some kind of way that they're going to have to be able to identify what they're being trained, what the device needs to know. And the devices aren't always smart. They're not always spatially aware. So if they're not spatially aware, you would need some kind of marker, like a QR code or something. But if they are spatially aware, then you can identify an object based on the model, design, or whatever, and then bring up relevant information. I don't know enough about the current headsets to know if the tooltips can be brought up in context, or what kind of effort needs to be put into that, because again, I don't have access to headsets to test things, mixed reality the way I do VR, so I can't test that, but Microsoft has a lot of documentation on HoloLens, so they might have something about that in their documentation. But if they're not smart enough to know when you've done something in context, like you can, and if you're doing stuff in real life, that's possibly the case. So if that, like completing a step in VR, the software can know when the step is successfully completed. But if you're doing something in real life, and mixed reality or augmented reality is just augmenting information on that real life thing, they're not going to necessarily know that the step is completed. So there would need to be a way to indicate to the device that the step is completed. And so you'd have to tell them and that mark it as complete versus the software automatically knowing it's complete. And that is it for first steps. So then next time we will pick up at first contact. I got to get back to work. Thanks for hanging out. Let me see if there are any game developers streaming right now. Let's see. Let's see, Unreal Engine is streaming right now, and she's making clothing modeling, so we're gonna go to Unreal. I think we're gonna raid Unreal. So if you want to watch game creation with Unreal, I'll switch to that. Thanks for watching. I'll see y'all next time. Okay, so they don't let us raid them, so fine. We won't raid them. But thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.